Let me ask you something. You ever heard spiritual or holistic people ever talking about they don't get into politics? Well, I do. Okay, let me tell you why. Because politics means the people, and a politician is somebody supposed to take care of the people. Now, I don't know about you, but I care about how I get taken care of, okay? What's up, y'all? I'm Prashona and Bree from Brown Like Me TV, reporting on the D.C. Mayoral Forum around food equity the other night. In this video, I'm not representing the views of Community Grocery Co-op as a whole, just my channel's reporting of an event they hosted. And also know that a cooperative is just that, a cooperative. And a cooperative is multiple people with multiple perspectives, not one, but aligned in one common cause. In this case, food justice. And my channel is all about justice. You know what I'm saying? For those who missed it, the event was as informative as it was political, and I'm here to report on it. The questions were centered around food equity, which means an equal distribution of quality foods among white folks and the rest of us. Because as of now, and for a very long time, it ain't been. And we know why. Let's take a listen at that intro vid.
Food deserts is just not it. It's just not it.
You might be wondering, what exactly is a food desert? Well, you ever drive around certain neighborhoods and see a handful of grocery stores and endless diverse food options? Then drive around yours and see about one grocery store and the same 2 or 20 food places? And not too many are exactly, healthy. That's because we live in a food desert. Per economist and CGC member Mark Humphreys, a food desert is an area in the United States with limited access to affordable and nutritious food, particularly in more ignored places where less money is going around for community resources.
And because of a history of unequivocally racist policies in the U.S., those communities many times have a little more melanin than others.
Funny how that works. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's called food apartheid, and it's behind statistics like this, which leads to statistics like this, and even wilder statistics like this, which have led people to get up and do something all over this country to take back our health. Gem City Co-op in Ohio, Kingston Co-op in New York, Little Africa Co-op also in Ohio, and Community Grocery Co-op in Washington D.C. Healthy groceries in the hood by and for the people, not private interests. But we don't stand alone in this work, because the people also need a platform. So we get together with grassroots media networks like this, and holistic health education efforts like this, and movements to raise awareness of the selling out of our health to private industry like this. And at the core, we connect with movements like this, who connect our local Black heroes, the farmers, with people who are now educated and empowered to take back our health. But we can't do this alone. We need your help, the people, the politicians, because politics is supposed to be about us, not private interests, but our collective well-being at the center. That means opportunities for us to grow, to spread our work to the people, and to make sure we are all good. Together, let's begin the discussion of how to connect all of our work so that we're not singing the same song in a few years. And let's take back our city, because nothing will change unless we do something. Okay, so the video breaks down food apartheid, which has been a really serious issue in the world, in our country, and right here in DC. And this is the result of a racist and classist history, not a theory, that has favored white folks and those with money and institutionalized education, who coincidentally for a very long time have also been white folks. Again, due to racism. If you want to get more educated on this topic and not just have a butthurt opinion about it, check out the link in my IG page right here and scroll on down right here to the actual history of the United States, where you will find butthurt comments, because the truth is hard to swallow. Ain't no theory, nothing you can argue with. It's actual history. It's just actual history. And that breaks down to melanated people, particularly indigenous First Nations whose land was stolen, and the descendants of those also stolen, trafficked, and enslaved by this country and in DC, who have statistically been given the worst food options until we eventually internalized it and made it our normal. This looks like higher diabetes rates and shorter life expectancy, aka we get sicker, we die sooner, because our food is whack. Meanwhile, while many of us got stripped of our indigenous food systems, organic foods and yoga chains start to pop up in mostly white neighborhoods. It's almost as if they found out that the secret to life is to be happy, be flexible, and eat lots of natural foods from the earth. Go figure. Meanwhile, the rest of us get stuck being the target of a toxic food industry that does not care if we die, as we've seen in many of those statistics and experiences shared by Don't Mute My Health. Now pay attention to this, because this is a common theme in American history, the don't care if we die part. And that's because, one, our country is founded on white supremacy. Sorry to say it, but it's the truth. That's actually what manifests destinies all about. On kicking out and mass murdering indigenous peoples of this land, and then trafficking black people to work it for them. At the deprivation of human and civil rights. And by the way, no Asians were allowed in either until their governments pumped math and science, which then made letting Asians in lucrative and strategic. All facts. And number 2, the U.S. is founded in capitalism, which oftentimes means the profit of corporations is more important than your life. Find out more about it from this series over here. What this looks like is big business spending way more money advertising high sugar drinks to black people more than white people, even though black people suffer from higher diabetes rates. Thank you, don't mute my health. The solution, take back our health. Okay, how? Number 1, start our own grocery stores like the ones popping up all over the country the video mentioned. If you're here in DC, join the Community Grocery Co-op and become a member today to help start our own grocery stores in Ward 7 and 8 with foods we choose. Number 2, encourage people to grow their own foods like DC Greens did at the Well at Oxen Run and many other community gardens all over DC and the country and the world. Number 4, educate people like I Am Wanda and Don't Mute My Health so we make better, more informed decisions about our health. And as the video mentioned, we can't do any of this on our own. We need people to get on board and make these movements louder, stronger, and bigger, and just plain possible. That way, big business politicians won't turn down the invite next time to even come to a forum on food equity. I'm just saying. To her credit though, Bowser did appoint the Food Policy Council, who she could have even asked to show up on her behalf. Since she appointed them, or even write in responses, as all politicians were also offered the opportunity to send in written responses to questions on food equity for those who couldn't be there. I'm just saying. So anywho, let's find out who the politicians were who have shown concern about discussing the topic with grassroots movements enough to show up. All parties and politicians with accessible contact information have been reached out to because we are not playing the bipartisan game, we are all in this together, okay? Today, these 3 politicians have shown up and ready to answer to the community, and within a week's worth of time, no less. So that priority for discussing food equity with the people is noted. Here's what they had to say. All candidates were emailed the questions ahead of time. Number 1, how will you work to provide governmental incentives and support to further the food equity efforts in our community?
What would I do? I will leverage the resources in the government to ensure that we can support co-ops throughout the district. We know that we are agricultural people and we can grow our own produce in our own communities. And I've started some of that work already as a council member. In fact, I was the one that funded the local grocery store in Ward 8 to be able to open when the deal was about to fall through on South Capitol Landing Street. I also did a number of other projects in which we get into in Ward 8 that I want to expand across the city to ensure that we can empower communities to take advantage in their own communities and support them. But it's not government driven, but it's community driven. We're supporting them with our dollars, resources, and also our agencies.
So I want to remind us as we answer this question that the council passed the supermarket tax incentive law in 1988, almost 35 years ago, identifying some of the neighborhoods that were most in need of new grocery stores. We have tried this same approach of offering incentives for grocery stores to come to parts of our city where they clearly don't want to come, begging these corporations, and it just has not worked. And so we have got to stop trying to beg folks who don't want to be part of our community to be part of our community. I want us to focus on smaller grocery stores that are hiring residents, getting fresh produce from around our region that are truly parts of our community. This is actually more similar to the history of DC, where we used to have self-sustained communities, not large grocery stores spread out, but smaller grocery stores for each neighborhood. We must absolutely try new approaches like co-ops so that there's community investment, community buy-in, and community focus.
You can't have a serious question about food inequity without first addressing transportation. I am proud to be one of the few candidates running for mayor of a major U.S. city that's proposing an entirely free metro system and have the plan to do it and execute it. That is WMATA-free, both rail and land. Food inequity, by definition, is the lack of proximity to good and nutritious food. In addition to that, we will have community gardens. We will also have what I engage in already at nearly every senior home in DC, that's surplus food sharing. In addition to that, as your next mayor, I will ensure that we close and increase WIC, SNAP, and also, as I've said in the last forum and in many other forums, we will incentivize grocery stores, large big box stores, to come in areas that they have in the past refused to come. This is about political will, not what we can't do, but getting a bold, decisive, leader that's not afraid of these big corporations and that will mandate that they come east of the river.
Number 2, how will you build on food as medicine initiatives such as DC Green's produce prescription program to not just treat disease, but also prevent it?
I helped start the Produce RX program right here in Ward 8 in partnership with Giant and our other partners here. Had a food justice walk in 2018 in which residents from all over DC joined us to talk about the inequities in grocery options in DC. Ward 8 was home to one grocery store serving over 80,000 residents. Now we have 5 grocery stores in Ward 8 right now. That's a direct impact of a vision and strong leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So I'm committed to addressing the inequities in our community, not just through grocery stores, but through community gardens and co-ops. And so I've already been doing the work, and I plan on expanding that work across the district as the new mayor of Washington, D.C. And so it's just not talking the talk, but as a leader, I walk the walk, and the evidence is in the community right now. And we're eating fresh produce right now, in which I went today. Got me a thing of oranges. You probably can't see it because of my background. Right across the street at the Good Foods Market. So we want to continue the leadership all across the district.
The first thing that we have to do is make sure our residents in every part of the city actually have access to fresh foods and produce. So what I see too often, particularly in Ward 8, is communities that utilize their neighborhood store, their corner store as their primary grocery store. And when you go inside, you find foods that are not fresh and that are overpriced. And I see this too often. So the first thing we have to do is be pushing our local markets to get fresh food, and we can connect those dots with local produce. We have to make sure that we are not subjecting our city, particularly those who have the least, to price gouging. Because if folks are eating healthy, then we are preventing a lot of the diseases that we are spending so much money treating on the back end. The next thing I'm going to do is use technology to get fresh foods more quickly to people who are not near fresh foods, and particularly people who have mobility issues. So we're going to use technology to deliver food to those who need it as we build smaller brick and mortars.
One thing we have to do, very critically important, is get our communities moving. So engaging programs like Fit DC and also We Fit DC. That's important so that people that, face chronic diseases or the likelihood they live in an area where they may be subject to getting one of those, that they're moving. We know that exercise as well as eating is the cure to food as medicine actually working. Again, as your mayor, I will do what I've already done. I have delivered a surplus food sharing from Trader Joe's and Whole Foods over the course of the last 2 years to almost every senior home in the District of Columbia. That is bringing food that may be produce a day or 2 old, but still usable. It may be bringing ugly fruit and those sorts of things to seniors where they can have that fresh produce. In addition, as was said in earlier, community gardens, that's going to be extremely important to me. I will do that. So that is the way we get food to really work as food as medicine.
Number 3, given citywide gentrification, what will you do to hold space for Black futures through wellness, economic, and community-driven initiatives in DC?
As a candidate for mayor, my job is to take some of the initiatives I already started working on as an elected official now across the city. I created a bill that speaks to the displacement-free zones that's designed to freeze the taxes in and around areas hardest hit by development. If you look at 8th Street, U Street, 14th Street, Pottsville, Georgia Avenue, you see that as we built up this fantastic, beautiful city, that most people that were there originally, like you stated, no longer live there. And you can say the same for a lot of the businesses. So it's important that we save these businesses by empowering them to own their own buildings. Even though they had a store there or a business there, not all own their own buildings. So we work in partnership with other council members to save some businesses here in Ward 8. I want to take that same leadership across the district and leverage our relationship with Wells Fargo to own businesses right here in our community. And I think that's important to ensure equity and longevity in our communities.
The first thing that we have to do is stop displacement of Black neighborhoods, residents and businesses included. We have to invite neighbors into the development process. Stop treating communities as blank slates for trying to paint something for new people to move into, and create what is missing in the neighborhoods that already exist for the people who are already there. One of the focuses I've had as a council member is preventing displacement of Black businesses. That's why I worked hard and used an unprecedented move to help 3 Ward 8 businesses purchase their buildings so that they would not be displaced. This is something that we can replicate, but we also have to do work that I've already started on the council. When we see new industries opening up, we always have to carve out space on the ground level for businesses of color, like in the marijuana industry.
Black-owned or minority-owned business on the ground floor is something that is critical and that we will ensure happen. As your mayor, part of our business community is part of our community. And that's where the gentrification begins, in the business community and the churches. And we will ensure that any new development is required to carve out space for an artist, coffee shop that is Black owned. You get the sense of a business of that light. In addition to that, we need to ensure that our CBEs are actually going to people of color. Right now, 90% of those are not going to people of color. As your mayor, I will ensure that we have a full audit of every single department in DC to ensure that the monies are going where they should be going.
And next, we opened up to more questions from the community.
Some of the candidates who've spoken have acknowledged the community gardens that are already do exist. Could we elaborate on efforts to grow food, encourage residents to grow their own food? And what a policy response might look like to that.
So where I would start is talking to residents who don't grow their food, to ask them what their barrier is, because there may be barriers that we can relieve. I know some folks who have community gardens have said, not having access to a restroom is preventative. For some folks, just getting there, transportation is preventative. So if we understand what the barriers are, we can pull down those barriers, and we can look at other lands that are not being fully utilized and utilize those as other community gardens to give more folks an opportunity.
Here in Ward 8 and other parts, just like Ward 8, don't have backyards. And so we have to utilize resources in and around our communities. One of the things we've done was actually fund a community garden right here in Ward 8 now, known as the Wheeler Oxen Run, which was just a concept and a thought that was lingering for quite some time. We partnered with the local nonprofits, DC Green Scheme, and other organizations through the Ward 8 Health Council to bring this to fruition. When they fell short, we stepped up and put money into ensuring they had what they needed. Education, we partnered with the local schools to make sure Simon, Hart, and Blue are part of the equation. We talk about teaching our babies and our kids that, yes, you can go take this seed, be patient, water it, and it's a whole learning process about agriculture that we're missing in this process.
To go to the heart of your question, we will incentivize anyone that grows their own food. We have city level tax incentives, and we can do that. We really got to, not only incentivize, but also identify space. We know that there's a lack of green space in our city now, but we also know that many developments also have acquired space that's a vertical, horizontal development, where there can be roof gardens and those sorts of things. So we will explore all options, especially on a city that's been heavily gentrified like DC. But I think the big catalyst here is providing tax incentives to those that actually grow their own produce.
And finally, let's hear some closing reflections on holistic health in the district. And click the link in the bio to find out more of the questions and answers addressed in the Mayoral Forum.
I believe personally that we are what we eat. And historically in our community, we find that in marginalized, poor communities that we are eating food that's detrimental to our health because it's the cheapest. I know I grew up on hot dogs and pork and beans, bologna and cheese, ooza noodles, steakums, and all those processed foods led to a lot of high blood pressure, diabetes, and death in my family. In fact, my immediate family. And so as I grow older and as I think about leadership as a mayor, we have to re-educate our community on what healthy living is, and that includes exercise. I heard that We Fit mentioned, we start our partnership with Mr. Houston and Joe Houston. We started in Ward 8 with also Fit D.C. with Georgetown. We started that right here in Ward 8. When we did the We Ride the Bikes in 8 at 8, that started right here in Ward 8. And so that's the type of leadership I want to take throughout the city to ensure that we are not just eating healthy, we're moving healthy, and we're thinking about how to create a healthy village where people are having dialogues, Zooms, and conversations about healthy living all around the board. We can build a healthcare system with the hospital, but we must also build a healthcare system with our eating habits and our curriculums in and out of the schools and our communities.
I'm a nearly 50-year-old man that still runs about 40 miles a week. I'm uber healthy, and knock on wood, I hope that I remain that way. I can tell you a large part of my good health is because I move. I exercise daily. I run daily. I believe that in conjunction with using good, fresh produce and making that accessible for our residents, we can use organizations like Fit DC, and then also an organization, We Fit DC, that's run by a gentleman over in Ward 8, Joe Houston. I've attended a number of his free workshops where they go out in the community and they get people moving. That in conjunction, you can bring the produce right to the exercise venue. I mean, I don't know that there are many better ideas than that to really get people using food in conjunction with movement.
We have pretty well touched on the importance of food, nutrition, and exercise, and I think everyone here agrees on it. What we have to remember is that people can't exercise outside if they're dodging bullets, and folks across our city, particularly in the places most likely to have food deserts and food apartheid, people are telling us they're afraid to go outside, that they're afraid to go into their local stores. If you look at the difference between Rock Creek Park and Fort DuPont, what you see is nonstop inequities that mount up over time. Like nobody's going hiking, in on a trail that's not kept up, that's dangerous. Folks aren't going for a walk around their block if they're worried that they might have bullets flying over their head. And so as we pay attention to these health equity issues, we have got to make sure that we're not losing sight of the public safety issues and the maintenance equity issues, the green space equity issues that are plaguing a lot of our communities. Inequity is compounded in our communities, and these issues didn't start recently. They're not simple. Unwinding them won't be simple either. And so we need a mayor who's going to be focused on the task, but also who is rooted.
So there you have it, straight from the butcher's mouth. You decide for yourself, but remember, the proof's in the pudding, ain't about the words, it's about the actions.